The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Is low milk supply really as common as we've been led to believe? In this episode, IBCLC Bec Hodgson is here to challenge one of the most persistent breastfeeding myths out there.
So what we mean by low milk supply is that our supply doesn't meet the needs of our baby. About 50% of women who end their breastfeeding journey feel that that was due to a low milk supply.
Our breasts change quite drastically, and also our babies can display such challenging different behaviours, can't they? Like fussy babies in that first 6 weeks.
When you've got your baby, it's really difficult to kind of find knowledge and process it and implement it because your brain just isn't working in that way.
Hello, I'm Pip and welcome to the Midwife Pip podcast, the home of expert information and real chats on all things pregnancy, birth and beyond. Is low milk supply really as common as we've been led to believe? In this episode, IBCLC Bec Hodgson is here to challenge one of the most persistent breastfeeding myths out there. From the science behind milk production to busting misconceptions that fuel the myth, this episode will change the way that you think about milk supply and empower you with the knowledge to support successful breastfeeding. So welcome back and thank you so much for joining me on the podcast because you're a very busy lady.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting about it.
First of all, can we just appreciate that I got there with the IBCLC? Now, tell anyone listening back what that actually means.
So, an IBCLC is an international board certified lactation consultant. So it means that all of us that have that title have sat a lengthy exam and done lots of kind of pre-education and training, learning and hands-on hours and experience prior to the exam to mean that we are qualified to have that title basically and to support families with the appropriate knowledge behind feeding.
So basically, you are like the goddesses of feeding knowledge. Like if you want the best of feeding knowledge, find someone like you.
Well, I think so, yes.
Own it, Beck. Own it. Like I've often found myself saying to people recently, what this woman doesn't know about supporting families with feeding probably is not worth knowing. So we are definitely in safe hands with you. But one of the things, Beck, that I know you and I talk about quite often is this term low milk supply. And you just shared before we hit record that actually we think around half of breastfeeding journeys that end before parents want them to are down to this idea that there is a low milk supply. Can you explain to us, Beck, what we actually mean by low milk supply and why we think it's more of a myth than actually a kind of medical reality for so many women?
Yeah, so what we mean by low milk supply is that our supply doesn't meet the needs of our baby. And yeah, about 50% of women who end their breastfeeding journey feel that that was due to a low milk supply. So here it's important that we look at that perceived low milk supply and actual low milk supply. Because a lot of the time, for most of them women that have stopped their feeding journey, sadly that will be due to a perception that they did have a low milk supply as opposed to a medical reason or a true low milk supply. And that's because we think around only 4% of women have a true medical reason why their supply is low. So it's important that we kind of unpick perceived versus actual and that we understand and kind of unpick the common misconceptions around breastfeeding and feeding our baby. And we know what's normal, because that will then help us to pick out what might be abnormal and what might need support. And for lots of us, we can probably troubleshoot things that are happening in our feeding journey to get us to where we want to be.
I love that. And how common actually is a real low milk supply?
So they think about 4% of women. So it's really difficult to kind of quantify it, because how do we truly test somebody's milk supply? Because what we pump doesn't tell us what somebody's supply is. But it's about looking at what our baby tells us, and that will tell us whether our baby is transferring milk well. And lots of times there is things that we might be doing on our feeding journey that could inhibit our supply or cause problems on our journey, that if we kind of knew about it or change something, we can improve our supply and improve our feeding journey. But lots of times the support isn't there behind that to support families through different troubles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's this idea still, isn't there, that like breastfeeding should all go smoothly. And actually, it's so common, myself included, twice, that we need some support with successful breastfeeding. Like, I feel like that needs to become the norm rather than this idea that should all just be really natural and go smoothly.
Definitely. And I read somewhere a really good kind of quote about how breastfeeding is natural like walking. Like, you've got to practice it, you've got to learn it, as opposed to natural like breathing, that's just a reflex that happens naturally. And I thought that was amazing, because actually that explains it beautifully. It's a relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to work it out together, and the textbooks might tell you all the things that you need to know and the videos that you get sent, but actually you and your baby have got to work it out together and piece that puzzle together on your journey.
I love that. That's such a good analogy. That's absolutely brilliant. I love that so much. And babies make it, I think, quite tricky for new parents, as do our boobs, really, because in that initial period when mums are probably most worried about this milk supply and the kind of volume of milk they're producing, our breasts change quite drastically. And also our babies can display such challenging, different behaviors, can't they? Like fussy babies in that first 6 weeks can make it a little bit confusing, and we almost are looking for the thing to fix a problem sometimes that perhaps isn't a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And lots of the kind of normal newborn behaviours that we see, that unsettledness, increase in crying from about 2 weeks, that peaks around kind of 6 to 8, not wanting to be apart from us, not wanting to sleep in like a basket or a cot, and waking when we put them down. All of these things are normal, but they make us doubt ourselves and our ability to feed our baby, because maybe we don't know that that's normal. And also lots of things that we see on social media kind of portrays motherhood in like a glorified light, and is babies settled lovely in cots, and talks about putting babies down beautifully after a feed and they just sleep for hours. And in reality, that's not the case, and it sets us up to fail almost, and makes us think that we're doing something wrong when actually our baby's normal.
Yes. Oh my goodness, Bec. How many times, and this is a slight tangent here, how many times has a new mum said to you, my baby just will not settle in their cot? And you're like, no, they don't want to be in their cot. Like, why are there all these pictures out there of sleeping babies in their cots? Like, babies just don't like sleeping in their cots to start with. It's so normal.
It's like the biggest lie that is ever sold to us as parents.
There's a reason why on Marketplace there are so many like brand new looking Moses baskets in next to me cribs, like, because babies don't really like sleeping in them at all.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And let's go into the science then, Bec, because I feel like we can say to parents, no, your milk supply is great, it's normal, don't assume it's low. But I think until we really actually kind of peel back some layers and understand the biology, it can feel really hard to actually believe us in so many ways. So could you walk us through a little bit the kind of biology of milk production and what determines how much milk a mum might make?
Yeah, so initially our supply is hormonal driven. So in the first kind of few days, you'll move through the feeding kind of changes in milk, regardless of whether you are breastfeeding or bottle feeding your baby. So by that, I mean that we all make colostrum. We start to make that in our pregnancy, and that colostrum will kind of stick around for about 3 to 5 days normally. And then your more mature milk with like a bigger volume will come in at that point. So this will happen for everybody. And that's why our mums that choose to formula feed will still feel that kind of engorgement, that fullness. And that's because it's hormonal driven. So as the placenta leaves our body, our milk supply can start kind of ramping up and that production increases. Then we need to stimulate that to continue that supply. So what we do in the first 3 days and 3 weeks of our baby's life is what primes all the milk making receptors. So if you imagine like a big light board of like switches, and we need to switch all them switches on for milk production now, but also for our whole feeding journey, however long that's going to be. So it's about the hormones will be there to provide us with that initial kind of response and that boost, but also the supply and demand. So the more that we feed our baby, the more that we stimulate the breasts, the more milk we make. So that's how that supply kind of works. And when we get to about 4 to 6 weeks, that hormonal driven aspect drops a little bit and we move more to supply and demand. So it's really important that in the first few weeks of our baby's life, we really truly responsively breastfeed our baby. We give them lots of opportunities to feed at the breast so that we can prime as many milk making receptors as possible to then have all of them receptors primed and ready to go for that ongoing milk production. And that's what's going to set us up for success.
I love that. And I really think, Bec, that it's a lack of understanding, and I'm not putting any blame on, new mums or breastfeeding mums here at all. But I think one of the things that we're good at in society is telling mums how great breastfeeding is. But one of the things that we're really bad at is actually empowering mums with knowledge before their baby arrives, because like you said, it's the first 3 days. So it's no good learning this on day 4 when you're struggling. You needed to have known this before your baby came. So I think we're really bad at getting that to women. And then we're really bad at supporting them so that on day 2, when you feel like this is the hardest thing in the world and what have you done, and your baby blues and you're in tears and you're emotional, actually being able to scoop parents up and provide that reminder and that reassurance. I feel like we really let mums down in so many ways in that kind of period, that really early postnatal transition where there's so much going on. And just in my experience supporting families back, I really feel like this then leads mums to doubt themselves, and therefore we then start to hear this, oh, I must not have enough milk, my body's not working as it's meant to. Do you feel that that's kind of a similar pattern, or do you see other things that seem to kind of give us this myth about milk supply being an issue?
No, I agree. So I think that lots of it is like a lack of knowledge behind not only the physiology, but also what's normal for our babies. So that then when our babies display this normal newborn behaviour, it makes us question ourselves because we don't necessarily understand that they're supposed to behave in that way, and also understand how our milk production works, because you need to understand both of them to know that the kind of second night when your baby's going to be cluster feeding most of the night and you're going to be awake more than you're asleep is normal. But if you don't have that understanding, you're going to think, I've got no milk, my baby's starving. So it's really important that we get this right, and at the moment I don't think we do. And also knowing that there's 2 things, kind of 2 different parts to milk production. You've got prolactin, which is like the chef of milk production, so that makes the milk. And then you've got the oxytocin, is like the waiter, they deliver the milk. And we need both of these hormones together to help our milk production kind of happen and help our baby to feed effectively at the breast. And if we don't know about these 2 things and what we can do to kind of help our milk supply, then it kind of sets us up to fail because we don't understand it.
Yeah, definitely. And we mentioned like social media and the kind of, I guess, the media in general, really, when it comes to breastfeeding. How do you think that's kind of perpetuating or kind of, I don't know, adding to this myth and pressure? Because I'm really conscious, we both have a presence in the social world. Lots of parents now, the first place they go to for support and information is social media. Do you think this is a good thing, Bec? Is this a bad thing? How is this kind of trajectory looking for parents?
So I think there's positives and negatives. I think you need to be looking in the right place, but I think it's really difficult to know where the right place is. So there is really good support out there. from professionals, but also from other mums, because we know that peer support is really important. And particularly when you're going through something really difficult, like cluster feeding on that second night, actually, maybe you need to see other mums that are saying, yep, I'm in this too, and it's normal. So actually, there's definitely loads of positives. But I think in terms of breastfeeding and kind of normal newborn behaviours, there are lots of things on social media that make us doubt ourselves and feel that our baby is broken. There's lots out there about kind of the day in the life of, and people do like recordings of their day, and actually lots of the things on there are unrealistic expectations, and it's really easy to watch somebody's video and think, oh, that's their whole day, but actually that's been edited and cut, and it doesn't show all the kind of messiness of parenthood, which is really normal. But actually that kind of almost sets us up to fail, because we think that their baby sleeps lovely and peacefully in a basket, and we think that ours is broken and starving because they don't do that. So I think there are lots of aspects that are kind of glorified, and there's lots out there about kind of having massive milk stores and gallons of milk in your freezer. And this sets such an unrealistic expectation for most of us, because most of us cannot achieve that. And actually it glorifies an oversupply, which we don't want. You've got to then manage an oversupply. But there's lots out there of people's freezers full of milk, when actually we just need to feed our baby, not our freezer. And it's really difficult to battle that. And for parents, how do you know what's right and what's wrong? It's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, where are you putting your pizza and ice cream if your freezer's full of milk? Like, that's what I want to know, because my freezer is full without any milk in
Yeah.
it. Like, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing? But you're so right, aren't you? Like, there is this kind of glamorization. And I think, like, as parents, when we do get those moments, they do happen if you're in the depths. When we do get those moments of our child like sleeping peacefully or being all content and happy, that's when we think, oh, it'd be nice to take a picture of this. It'd be nice to document that. When it is messy and you're in the middle of night sweats and they're inconsolable and they're unsettled, the first thing that doesn't ping to your mind is, oh, it'd be nice to take a picture of this. Yeah. So it means that we've like automatically, haven't we, got this kind of warped view of motherhood, including breastfeeding, which is such a challenge. And I think we have to just ground ourselves in the fact that they are squares in a moment in time, and they are absolutely not the whole picture. But it's so hard to not compare, isn't it? And that's why, like you said, having that real mum tribe, so that you hear, oh, me too, oh yeah, my baby does that, is like the biggest relief, isn't it? Just someone else being like, oh yeah, me too, I'm in this with you. It's just what we need, not like squares of everything looking perfect.
Exactly, 100%. You need other people to be in the trenches with you, and there's lots of mums that will be there, but maybe we don't always see it.
Yeah. There is, so like the vast majority of mums are also navigating the unsettled baby and doubting their body. And actually what we need is support and education. Like, the reason that breastfeeding doesn't work for the vast majority is not women's bodies, and it's not babies. It is that support and education, because like you say, it's a whole new skill. We wouldn't just leave a baby and expect them to suddenly one day get up and walk.
Exactly.
It is it's so important. It's so important. Now, for parents that are worried, Bec, that they aren't producing enough milk, or maybe they've caught themselves like actually thinking, oh, I don't have enough milk for my baby, what practical steps can they take to either assess this, ground themselves, or support their supply with a bit more confidence? My brand new book, Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth, is now available. So much more than a book, this is a guide that allows me to hold your hand through your birth preparation journey. With over a decade of experience and knowledge packed in, to ensure you really are empowered in the way you deserve to achieve a positive birth, regardless of the twists and turns that crop up. Make sure that you get your hands on Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth book now, and are empowered to have the birth experience that you deserve.
So firstly, we need to look at, is it an actual low supply or is it a perceived low supply? So as part of all the things I'm going to talk about now, you also need to access some skilled feeding support. So kind of typing into Google breastfeeding support groups near me, you'll find local kind of breastfeeding support groups, peer support. You've often got skilled professionals there, lactation consultants, that you can access support for free, or on the NHS, or finding private lactation consultants near you, because that skilled support is pivotal in helping you kind of unpick it. There is also the breastfeeding helpline that anybody can ring for free, and that's really good kind of starting point. You can ring in kind of the middle of the night, like late hours, and it gives you kind of at least some questions answered. But that kind of hands-on skilled support is really important for a full feeding assessment. But some things that you can look out for as a mum or a dad is about our baby's wet and dirty nappies. So that tells us the most about how our baby is transferring that milk, because what goes in has to come out. So we want to be having at least 6 heavy wet nappies in a 24-hour period, and at least 1 to 2 poos. And by about day 5, that should be kind of a yellow colour. It will be quite runny. That's really normal. It can be quite explosive with a breastfed baby. That's normal. We expect that to be like that. So that's kind of our biggest indicator, because that's going to show us what our baby is kind of processing. We want to look for that our feeds are effective. So we want a nice deep latch. So our latch needs to be comfortable. That's the main thing. Lots of times I see families and they've been told throughout their journey that their latch looks okay, but it's unbearably painful. Then it's not okay. That's the main thing. You can look at your baby, you can look at all of their signs that they're latched well, but if it's painful throughout that whole feed, then it's not right and we need to try again. So signs that our baby is latched effectively: their chin would be really pressed into the breast. So we want the chin to be buried in the breast and the nose to be free. If we're having to kind of put fingers onto our breast tissue to move out the way of our baby's nose, they're too high and they need to come further down towards their feet to really exaggerate that kind of chin in and head back. And that's going to allow our baby to get a deeper latch, because in your mouth, your baby has got like the hard palate at the front. You can feel it in your own mouth with your tongue. You've got the hard palate right at the front, and right at the very back, it drops off to a soft palate. And that's where our nipple needs to go. So for a baby to be able to do that, they really need to tip their head far back and come to the breast with their chin leading. If they're nose diving, they're not going to get that deep latch. And then when our baby is actually feeding and sucking at the breast, it should be comfortable throughout, and we shouldn't see any kind of dimpling or sucking in of baby's cheeks. Their cheeks need to be nice and full, and we want to see a full jaw movement. So we want to see that our baby's jaw kind of from their ear is working when they are sucking. We don't want to see their cheeks kind of sucking in almost like they were sucking a straw. That suggests that their latch is maybe quite shallow. And we should see that our baby moves through 3 parts of a feed. So initially they'll do quite fast sucks. That's where they're calling that milk. And then they'll move to more active period of feeding. And this is what we want our baby to do most of the feed, which is where we see that they're doing about 1 to 2 sucks to each swallow. And we see that they're kind of actively feeding for a good chunk of that feed. And then our baby will move to kind of a 3rd step, which is where they do more fluttery sucks. And they may appear that they're asleep throughout all of these periods of feeding. They may look like they're asleep, they've got their eyes closed, and you might be tempted to take them off. But actually, if your baby's latched deeply, allow them to move through all of these steps of feeding and allow them to self-release from the breast. And that's the most important thing, because if we take them off too soon, then we're going to disrupt that feed and maybe end it before our baby is ready to.
And if we do end feeds A before our baby's ready to back, or if that latch isn't quite right, can that impact milk supply in those kind of early days?
Yes. So what we will probably see is a baby that's irritable, because we are disrupting their feed before they're finished. So we probably will see a baby that as soon as they come off, they want to go back on again because we've took them off a little bit too soon. But also if we keep cutting feeds short, or we have feeds where we are kind of more regimented with schedules or structures, we can see that we're not actually stimulating our breast as much as our baby needs to. So we really need to watch our baby and follow their cues and understand them normal newborn behaviours. So understand that they will feed really frequently. It won't be kind of 3 to 4 hourly. Sometimes it might be hourly, and that's normal.
Yeah.
And kind of looking at the kind of total feeds in a 24-hour period, we want about 8 to 12 feeds. It can be more than that, and when we're cluster feeding, it will be more than that. But that gives us kind of a indicator of what's normal for 24 hours. And we need to move away from structured kind of timed feeds and actually just look at our baby and know that that's going to be about kind of 5 to 40 minutes, somewhere in that kind of time span is a normal length of feed. And that's going to be different each feed, each baby.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like we need to just emphasize that point back on routines and newborn babies, because we live in this world, and maybe this is a little bit social media-esque as well. There's this idea that like we love a routine so often, don't we? And we love like structure and planning. Apart from me, Bec knows me, I'm chaos. But like often we love this idea of structure and planning and routine. And newborn babies are just not that. And I think that can be a really hard transition for lots of parents. And so I just want to, I guess, provide some reassurance in that that will come. But actually, it's going to come so much sooner if breastfeeding is the plan for your family, if we allow these early days and weeks to do their thing for your body and your baby to regulate together and be super responsive and lean into day and night being a complete shambolic mix up, and just lean into that for a short period, you'll then find that actually routine comes much quicker because you haven't got complications like actual low milk supply, because you've allowed your body and baby to kind of do that dance. Now, I'm from a place of I love having no routine for like 6 months and that works for me. But I know for a lot of people that is absolute like worst case and they couldn't bear it. So actually looking at maybe more like 10, 12 weeks might feel more comfortable, but really protecting that first kind of 6 to 12 weeks is so important.
It really is. And I think our expectations that we have in our pregnancy and the kind of awareness that that chaos is going to be happening and it's normal really sets us up for success. Because if we don't know that that's going to happen, when that hits us and that 4th trimester is really rough and you feel that your baby is just feeding all the time, if you don't know that that's going to happen and that's supposed to happen, and we don't know what to look out for to tell us that our baby is actually growing really well and transferring milk really well, we actually cause ourselves to have more doubt in our ability to do it. So it's really important that we know that there's not going to be any routines to start with, and that's okay. That's what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah, and sometimes I often say to parents, actually, past that 6-week point, just start journaling kind of what your baby's doing. And often you find that they're kind of starting to slot into a very loose, but some kind of routine that you can just sort of gently follow and guide. And sometimes that gives you that little sense of kind of that control coming back a little bit. It's not gone forever. It is a short period of time. But I know it can feel a real challenge, and especially for breastfeeding parents, because like you say, they are just not going to be on a 3 to 4 hour feeding schedule. One day it might look one way, the next day the sun's shining, it's really hot, your baby naturally will feed more for thirst, and that's really normal. But if you've got this idea of they're going to feed every 3 to 4 hours, then that's going to be another kind of curveball for you to navigate. It's that education again, isn't it, Bec? Like, women need to know this stuff before they've got their little one in their arms.
Absolutely, because when you've got your baby, it's really difficult to kind of find knowledge and process it and implement it, because your brain just isn't working in that way. And even me as a lactation consultant, when I had my daughter, I still questioned myself. I still doubted myself, my ability to feed my baby, because in them first few days, you're driven by emotion. Your logical brain is not there. And you're literally just wanting to like provide for this baby and do everything that you can. And when they are unsettled, the first thing you do is doubt yourself. So it's really important that we know about it, we know to expect it, and also that our support network around us, our family, our partner, our friend, also understand that as well, because they are going to be your voice of reason in that moment where you feel like you don't know what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah, you're so right. And you are just knackered to start with, and you do just really want some sleep. Like, you really, really want some sleep, don't you? More than anything, you do just really want some. And that can be really, really tricky. And I totally agree. And actually, the influences around you are so important. And I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but I remember with our first little boy, he was exactly that. All he did really for his first probably year of life, to be honest, was feed. That's all he wanted to do. And I remember my husband on probably like day 2 or day 3, you know, milk coming in, baby blues, baby had just fed for the first 72 hours of life and we hadn't really slept at all. And he was, you know, all that normal stuff, all that stuff you need to hear. Remember, this is normal. Like, he's clearly thriving, loads of positivity, loads of support. And had that conversation been different, had he not have been educated about breastfeeding and had been of the mindset of, oh, actually, maybe, you know, our baby is getting hungry, even as a midwife, at that point, we absolutely would have started to introduce formula. And I know one of the things that you speak to lots of families about, Bec, is that if we're not anti-formula feeding by any stretch of the imagination, but if your plan is to exclusively breastfeed, we really have to challenge this idea that giving formula in those early days is harmless, because actually it replaces those breastfeeds, which in turn, that whole biological mechanism that you just spoke about, we start to interfere with. So actually it can be really harmful to supply, and we can then cause that low supply that we were worried about in the first place that was probably actually fine.
Absolutely. And that this is like a bit of like almost like a top-up trap. Like, you give one top-up or a couple of top-ups because you think that you've got no milk, but actually by giving that supplement, unless it's clinically indicated, we are reducing the time at the breast. We're making our baby kind of really space out their feeds, because when they formula feed, it's a lot harder for them to digest. So they tend to be more sleepy. We also need a baby to actively breastfeed. So we need a baby that's hungry and showing feeding cues to breastfeed. So often we will miss feeds because we have given a top up. And then we almost get into like a cycle of, well, obviously I've got no milk because my baby's more settled. And we get in that cycle that it's really difficult to get out of. And then you almost create the low milk supply because we're not putting our baby to the breast as much as we would be. So it's really important that when we are giving supplements, it's either because it's true informed choice and we want to do it and we understand that it might affect our supply, but we're happy to go ahead with that and that's part of our plan, or that it's truly clinically indicated and we've tried everything else first. So we've had skilled support, we've had support with kind of latching and positioning our baby. We know that they are feeding effectively at the breast, and we've added in things to maximise the volume they're getting during feeds. So things like breast compressions and offering both breasts each feed, making sure we're not taking our baby off too early, and that we're not giving kind of teats, bottles, dummies that might be masking some of them feeding cues. And then at that point, if we've tried everything else and it's clinically indicated, then that's okay. But we use kind of small volumes so that we're supporting breastfeeding as opposed to inhibiting it.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, again, tummy volume of babies is another thing that parents need to know about before, isn't it? Oh my goodness, Bec, we could talk forever on this. It's so important, isn't it? And so vast. Bec, anyone that comes on the podcast, I ask for 3 top tips. Could you share your 3 top tips for an expectant mum or a breastfeeding mum listening?
Yeah, so my most important one is watch your baby and not the clock, because our baby tells us everything that we need to know about feeding. And we can get easily swamped into this 3 to 4 hourly feeding, which our babies don't know the time. They don't know when it's 3 to 4 hours. And actually our babies will show us feeding cues whenever they are starting to show hunger. So we really need to understand feeding cues and watch for them feeding cues and follow our baby's lead. My second one would be feed your baby, not the freezer. Because there's so much hype out there about having a massive milk stash and having loads of milk available that you're probably never going to use, because actually if you are needing to pump for your baby's bottles. At some point in your feeding journey, you're probably going to be pumping when you are separated. So that kind of gallons of milk that you've got in your freezer is probably going to be wasted because you've only got 6 months on it anyway. And an oversupply is not great because you've got to manage different things with that as well. So we actually just want your body and your baby to work really well together. And trust your body until it gives you a reason to doubt it. And when it does give you a reason to doubt it, so for example, your baby's not having them wet and dirty nappies, maybe their weight's starting to falter, then at that point, seek skilled support to help you correct it and to troubleshoot with you at that time. Because our body has grown a baby and birthed a baby, and it will feed a baby, but we've got to believe that it will and get the support that we need to get us on that journey of success.
Oh, I love that, Bec. I mean, my biggest takeaway has got to be feed your baby, not the freezer. I absolutely love that. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Bec, thank you so much. And if people want to find you, whereabouts can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Breastfeeding with Bec. And you can obviously look at my content or reach out to me if you need any support anytime, any questions.
Oh, Bec, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time and your expertise. And remember, feed your baby, not your freezer. Love that. If you have listened to this birth story, enjoyed it, and feel that you are ready to really embrace and dedicate yourself to having the most informed, supported, and empowered journey, and want to see if we may be able to support you in YPJ, your pregnancy and postnatal journey, please drop me a Instagram DM at midwife_pip or get in touch on my email, pip@midwifepip.com, and let's chat through things and see if we might be a good match for each other. I hope you've enjoyed listening and wishing you all the best on your journey through pregnancy, birth, and beyond.